The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Now then, you're very welcome along. Monday evening here in Off the Ball. Great to be with you. So it was one of those close but no cigar type nights for Ireland at Hampden Park. It was a good performance in many ways. However, the end result does raise the possibility of relegation from Group B in the Nations League should the unthinkable happen tomorrow. I appreciate it did happen in Yerevan, but surely not. Dan McDonnell is with us this evening on the Football Show. Plus, Monday Night Rugby is coming your way. Rory O'Connor and Fiona Hayes will talk about Ulster's bright start, Connacht's struggles, Bundyacky's red card. And really, I mean, Munster 0 for 2 in the URC and with a genuinely very, very poor performance. So it's been a terrible start under Graham Rowntree. That is on the way after 8 o'clock. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Michael McCarthy here in studio. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
And Richie McCormack with us as well. Hello.
Welcome, Joe. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So, busy evening. Funny, if I put it to you, this was something said about the Munster game, Richie. I can't have this. Performance. I can't have this. I can't dress it up any better. Surprised at the inaccuracy, particularly going into their 22 and our ability to keep the ball in that area. That really shocked me, I'll be honest with you. It was just so poor. 8 turnovers in the first half, ill-disciplined, lost line-outs, knocked on, never got a foothold in the game. That's not angry fan or angry pundit. That is Graham Rowntree assessing his side after their 23-17 defeat away to Dragons.
Yeah, it wasn't good enough. You don't get away with losing to Dragons, who, with the greatest will in the world, are not the strongest force in Welsh rugby, never mind the URC. There is going to be a huge teething process, it now seems, for the new coaching ticket, which isn't just Rowntree, of course. There's others underneath of coming there in the summer too. But it's going to be a while before that Munster team does actually gel. I guess the worrying part from a Munster fan's perspective would be, what does that look like when it does gel? Because so far there hasn't been any real evidence of what Graham Rowntree's Munster at its best will actually look like. There's been fits and starts within games, but nothing you could really hang on. And I guess that result at the weekend will really have people a little bit worried as to what the season might bring. It's still 2 games in. There's still a lot of internationals to find their way back to full fitness, and Graham Rowntree will get his feet under the table with a group of players that he does already know, let's not forget. They're going to be okay, but it might just be a bumpy road to get there.
I tell you what you can get away with, Mick. Being Republic of Ireland manager and just losing games willy-nilly.
Stop it.
Hampden Park.
Stop it.
No problem. Never ends.
But sure, it's like
carte blanche, said Damien Delaney.
Yeah, I heard it, and a lot of people do feel that way, Joe. I wonder, are we always looking at the wider picture? I mean, we've lost games in the past that I feel should bring up a lot more scrutiny than what happened on Saturday. Ireland play well, probably, dominate one half, get dominated in another, have a chance to win a game or have a chance to go ahead at a time when it would be difficult for Scotland to get back into it. Away from home, amazing atmosphere, enjoyable game to watch, and we lost to a penalty that, while a penalty, let's not get into the dispute around that, was an unlucky one to give away. Was like incredibly unlucky. I didn't think Scotland were going to score at that point in the game, and you're having a different conversation if we had one of our national treasure 1-1 draws. The bigger test, the bigger game for me is tomorrow, because we're not going to qualify. This Nations League doesn't matter. Nobody's going anywhere, as much as we can argue about Stephen Kenny between in this window. The Euros is the only thing that matters. He's going to be there for the Euros, and if we don't qualify, I'd imagine he's gone. If we qualify, he stays on, right? It's as simple as that. We're not going to qualify for the Euros if we have a result like Luxembourg, if we have a result like Armenia, if we have a result like Azerbaijan. We have to win those games. They're the ones that I think there's a huge question mark over. Performances like that on Saturday, we could have won it, we could have drew it, we could have lost it. That's going to happen against teams like Scotland.
Yeah, I don't think, Rich, it's difficult to have any great problem with what Ireland produced on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll go along with Mick to a degree there. It was a case of one of those results where SH1T happens, and sometimes you just have to take it and move on. I don't necessarily share the enthusiasm about the first half performance that a lot of people would have had. I thought the first half, I know the atmosphere played into it. I know the sense of quote-unquote local derby played into it a bit too, that it was a bit more ragged than your average international. But I saw Bazunu playing the ball long an awful lot. I thought our strikers were isolated in ways that they possibly shouldn't have been if you're looking to control the game a little bit more than you want to in that aspect. But again, they didn't play overly badly. Like, you can't point towards a bad performance there, and this is just going to be, you would figure, one of those bumps along the road, and you have to look at kind of the bigger picture. There isn't necessarily a license to lose games, and we're going to get texts in about, you know, this being Stephen Kenny FM again. But for me, the performance wasn't brilliant. I think there's probably a better one to come. The worrying thing from an Armenia perspective is that, like, they're going to be massively wounded animals after their result against Ukraine. Like, they were beaten 5-0. They're really humbled. There's ructions among their press walking out of the manager's press conference today. They do have 4 players back from suspension, so they will be kind of renewed in their challenge. But it wasn't a bad performance on Saturday. That's the thing. Nobody can come away from the game going, well, we didn't live up to our optimum there. And well, it was what it was. Kind of take the defeat in the chin and move on to the next one. And we should have enough to beat in Armenia. And I say that should, with a massive emphasis underneath it and all in caps.
There was a real who'd be a manager vibe as well about Saturday. You set up the team well, you do everything you can, you get your goal, and then moments like the handball, Troy Parrott's chance, and Matt Doherty's hanging leg.
Yeah, and John Egan going to sleep as well. Like, I mean, he scored the goal, but we have to be honest about what happened. That's like, you know, there's 4 individual errors there.
They're beyond
Alan Brown,
control.
Troy Brown, John Egan,
fairness
and
to Kenny,
Matt Doherty.
he never hangs out
Punished for
the
them all.
players or individuals over mistakes. He'll never do it. Like previous managers, at a certain point, when they've just frayed enough, they end up blurting out, I just don't know the players, and almost it's out there. And it's
or
like,
when they feel that they've done the good job and they've been let down. Yeah, look, I mean, again, I've seen a good bit of that out of Stephen Gerrard over the last couple of years. We've seen it out of Frank Lampard. We've seen it out of former Ireland managers, as you mentioned. Look, it's better not to be that way, but it does beg the question as like, what can Stephen Kenny say in these interviews then? Because sometimes that is a fact, you know. Like, I mean, Matt Doherty, I thought, like, for someone that hasn't played football, had a decent game, but like, he made a mistake. That's fine, it's okay, but it cost us, you know. You get away with a lot of them a lot of the time, you know.
yeah. So where it leaves us tomorrow is win essential, and that puts a lot of the murmurings to bed. Because everybody accepts that
nothing changes
Euros,
if we don't win, I suppose. Like, I mean, if we lose, it's a disaster. It really is.
If we lose, it is very worrying.
No, but you see, I think even if we don't win, worrying would be still where I am. I just think that the conversation about whether we should sack the manager or not, like, I mean, it just needs to be put aside. Like, I mean, he's there till the Euros. These are competitions, but then the Euros is no more excuse land. But if we're still not able to beat Armenia, it's a massive pattern that we're not able to beat the weaker teams. And again, I just think it puts Saturday to me on the back burner as, like, you know, maybe Richie's point that it wasn't as good as some are making out is fine. Like, I will take us being in games away from home against teams slightly better or the same as us, and me enjoying the game, as opposed to the exact same situation in the past and finding it hard to stay awake or just feeling like you're wasting your life watching these guys as it was in the past. But, like, at the same time, we trusted that we were going to beat Armenia 2 days later, and I think that people have huge concerns that that's not the case tomorrow night.
Well, we'll talk more with Dan McDonald. There is a kind of nagging habit as well as we head towards March 2023 that, you know, Portugal away, score first and lose 2-1. Serbia, score first, lose 2-1. Score first against Scotland, lose 2-1. That Ireland are in these games and just not quite sealing the deal. And so there's an optimistic temptation to say, well, they're growing as a group and 7 of the 11 are under 23 and they'll really benefit from these experiences. But obviously this trend has continued up to and including Saturday night. So is it going to click next year in the Euros? Will we be looking back on Hampden Park and the experience in Portugal and saying, you see, they had to go through those moments to learn how to see out games, and now it's coming to fruition? Or will we be sitting there next year saying, this is just a trend with this team and this management, there's something missing? And we're not going to know the answer to that, of course, until next year. But at the moment, they're not getting over the line in these tight games. That is certainly a big missing piece.
It's 1-1 with 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
There's the type of team that wins that game and there's the type of team that loses that game. And generally it will end 1-1.
Yeah.
But, you know, unfortunately Ireland seem to be trending on the type of team that loses it. Like, what do you think though? Like, there's you know, that concern is there, but I suppose we don't know, and that's why I kind of That's why I find the Kenny in or out stuff sort of tiresome, or the fact that he's getting a free ride. Nobody, not many anyway, are suggesting that Stephen Kenny's the man forever. We're just saying that the World Cup campaign was what it was, and then we made a commitment to the Euros campaign.
Yeah.
And I'm almost saying, like, what happens in the Nations League is you're looking for good signs, but it doesn't matter up until we see what happens in the Euros campaign, you know.
Yeah.
So I really do hope, and the under 23 thing is significant. People do improve, they get more caps, they're going to be a lot more experienced now than if they went the way of what some of the people in the media who are suggesting that Stephen Kenny's not doing is doing a bad job would like us to have done, which is to keep the likes of James Collins around, or more experience on the pitch, and not blood the likes of Troy Parrott, not blood the likes of Michael Opemby. Josh Cullen must have nearly 20 caps now. He's a regular in the team. So on across the defenders, especially. No Shane Duffy, no Seamus Coleman. That's a brave move that he made last Saturday, and you can't say it didn't work out. I don't think that
back three are brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
When you say what is it, I think it's a kind of combination of everything. I definitely think there's an inexperience aspect to it. Like in the second half, and I agree with you, Rich. I don't think Ireland were as dominant as we like to think in the first half even. But in the second half, there was a period where Scotland were coming at Ireland, and it worked well at times, but we were very back to front. You know, we had Darragh O'Shea playing through balls, and we had Nathan Collins' distribution was brilliant at times, but it was all quite direct. Now, I don't mean long ball, I mean direct passing. But there was definitely a period in the second half where I think a more experienced head or two in there would have said, well, instead of us, the second we win the ball back, firing it into Obafemi's feet, let's take the sting out of Scotland here a touch. And so that's kind of inexperience, and that's acceptable. Now, maybe that's a quality thing. Maybe we don't quite have that ability against a team as good as Scotland to do that. So there's a bit of both there, perhaps. And then also, and Gary Breen made this point in his piece in the Irish Independent, like, Stephen Kenny, there are various aspects to management. So how good is Stephen Kenny within the 90 minutes? So this trend of starting games well, often taking a lead, why did Scotland get hold of the game? And Gary Breen, and we'll go through it with Dan later on, but he teases it out, for instance. The Scottish fullbacks in the first half very deep. That let Molumby and Knight close them down, and Ireland's back five very in control, and it was a nice solid line, solid base, and so Ireland were in pretty good shape. Second half, Steve Clarke, experienced, good manager, pushes on those fullbacks in a big way. And it's harder and harder for Molumby and Knight to get out to them. And instead, and you saw this for the equaliser, you have one-on-one with Matt Doherty and their fullback. And so Breen makes the point that at that phase of the game, that's where you look at Ireland's midfield and you need fresh legs to really get on and to get after their fullbacks. Because the plan was Molumby and Knight, you're on their fullbacks. McLean and Doherty were sitting deep. And so, you know, you could make a worrying argument that in that tactical battle, how did Steve Clarke wrestle control of the game a little bit, and that's part of it. So it's, you know, there's a whole bunch of things swirling around, and what we do too often in the media is we park all of that and we just go, do you like Stephen Kenny's approach or Big Sam's approach? It's one or the other.
No, that's fair. Yeah, and look, I mean, I think more and more people are probably on board with the fact that progressive approach is probably the only way forward, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Stephen Kenny, and that's where the debate comes in. I think your point about in game is 100% and worth exploring even further and worth looking for in games going forward. I would just say on the experienced heads getting the ball down and calming things down a little bit. I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone, because I mean we've had some incredible results and stuff over the years, but I've seen every game all of those experienced players have played, and I never got the sense that we were calm in those circumstances.
I agree, and that's why I said it could be an experience thing, or it could also be a quality thing.
Yeah, because Ireland, to be honest, I thought at times on Saturday did that exact job better than we've ever done in the past, or not ever done, but in the last, say, 10 years, where I've been there at the Aviva Stadium on so countless occasions just thinking, just take a second, just don't, like, and really, like, trying to hoof it so much that they mishit it and it doesn't even go anywhere or just goes up in the air. We've done that so countless times. Whereas, like, what happened was, I thought there was a barrage of Scotland pressure after the equaliser it didn't look like Ireland were going to survive. And then Obafemi, obviously an amazing break, very similar to what he did with Swansea earlier in the year, where he set up Parrott, perfect pass, Parrott misses, but actually Ireland calmed down from that point on, and I thought we're playing much better. And maybe it wasn't the first half, second half, and Richie's probably making a fair point there, but actually in periods Ireland played well and actually calmed it down at that point, having been massively under the cosh in a way that I don't think we would have done in the past. And again, I just think you get unlucky with something like the penalty decision.
Yeah, I mean, the Obafemi pass, I agree. How often do we see players make a mess of them? Because you're moving at such speed, there's a certain pressure on the pass because it's a big chance, and then you have to execute it as well, and they generally go wrong. It was such a good pass, and none of Parrott's touches inspired you. His body shape never looked good. The ball was under his feet. So you're not going to hammer a 20-year-old because he's obviously very talented.
It is the thing he needs to do in his game, though, and I've seen enough of him, and so has everybody else, that I just saw it in. I was like, this isn't his forte. This isn't his cup of tea here. You know, it's like he's going to overthink it, and he did a little bit, unfortunately. He'll get better at it. You know he will, but I hope he gets to that point where that's automatic. Yeah. Lastly on this then.
Yes.
Just on the positives, on something like maybe there being a lot of long balls in the first half. Scotland played an incredibly high line. That was something that we were trying to take advantage of, and I thought that, you know, Obafemi was very, very good at it. And he was more ball was coming back from balls up to the striker than I've seen from Ireland in a long time. And then when Ogbene came on, stepped it up again. I thought he was fantastic. And the form that he's shown, he's just willing to try things. He's willing to do things. They seem to come off nearly all the time for him. You know what I mean? Don't forget, like, he was in as well in the second half. He was like dragged down 3 times by the same guy in the same move for a yellow card. You know, there was a chance on there as well. So, like, I just thought Ireland kept going for it and were trying things, you know, in a way that we haven't always seen in the past. And this is, again, I don't know if everything has to be about Stephen Kenny. It doesn't. It's almost the development of these players that have played 2 seasons of international football now, and I think are coming into their own a little bit. And that's why, obviously, in a trend, you have to talk about results. Of course you do. But after every individual game, the result doesn't have to be the be-all and end-all. I thought there was a huge amount of positives to take out of Saturday. We
start the news round. I'll get to some of your texts in a moment. It's brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. So Stephen Kenny was talking this afternoon, Rich, or this morning indeed.
Certainly was. Yeah, he says he'll make 1 or 2 changes for tomorrow night's Nations League visit of Armenia. One of those alterations will definitely be in midfield with Josh Cullen suspended. Ireland need to win tomorrow night's game to stave off relegation from League 2. And despite the underwhelming finish to the latest Nations League campaign, Kenny insists that there has been one major positive.
We can see the emergence of players. You know, we can see the emergence of players. And that's critical. That's been critical for us as a nation. It's been critical for us, you know, as a team. To see, you can see players that are only going to get better. That's what you can see. You can see players that on an upward curve in their career that are going to improve by the time to get into the European Championship from March to November next year. In a year's time, they're going to even be better. And you can see that. That's by design. And the players themselves have got themselves into that position, into the team by their performances at club level and with the international team.
Well, one thing, regardless of how the qualification campaign goes for the Euros next year in 2023, say, for instance, I hope it's not the case, but say it didn't go well and Stephen Kenny and the FAI decide, well, that's that. Whoever the next manager in is, Richie, will say, well, thank you very much, Stephen, because you handed me a team that are on average 25 years of age or younger, and they've got more caps than most at that age. So you've been an unbelievable stepping stone. You know, like, come 2024, whether we're at the Euros or not, whoever's in charge will look at the squad and say, wow, this is great profile.
Yeah, and only getting younger. You look at what's there in Jim Crawford's under 21 squad as well, that could probably take the step up with, you know, immediate effect. Some of whom are as young as 17 in one instance. Similarly, there's probably another couple of granny rulers out there as well that we haven't even discovered yet. So whoever does pick up the reins from Kenny, if he does happen to relinquish them, of course, at the end of that Euros campaign, like he's got it made in the shade as regards a team of a really youthful profile with a lot of international experience under their belt, good and bad, who can, you know, weather any storm going forward. And Kenny will, I just hope, from his point of view, he'll hope that he's the one to reap the benefits of that, because that should never be overlooked. Whatever happens in the next 18 months, 2 years, the sea change in personnel on the international front has just been immense. Like, people like Chidozie Ogbene being spoken of in the way that he's spoken of in international football, the way Josh Cullen has been handed, you know, such a important role in midfield, the way Andrew Omobamidele almost looks like he's been missed now because he's been missing for a year, but you kind of think that somebody who at the age of 2021, like a ridiculously young age, is now an integral part of the defence. Like, these are huge things and huge benefits that are going to work in any manager's favour going forward.
So you mentioned the 21s. They're in Tel Aviv tomorrow.
Yep. And first leg goal scorer Evan Ferguson is a doubt for that under-21 Euro playoff second leg in Israel. The Brighton striker is nursing an ankle injury. Ferguson's goal at Tallaght Stadium on Friday night saw the first leg finish 1-1.
So plenty of text in, as there always is when talking about Ireland. Kenny and his team are doing a great job. They're improving in every game, more confident, technically better. This is a long-term project. Whereas right next to that text message, somebody says, not good enough, one up, then one down. When are you going to stop making excuses? That's DG. Agree Mick says, James and Cork, whatever happens tomorrow night, Kenny is there until the Euros qualification, so everyone needs to get behind him. Similar to England fans calling for Southgate to go, these games ultimately don't really matter. They do and they don't. I mean, they matter at the start when Stephen Kenny says we're going to try and win the group, and they matter when you're trying to ensure you have the safety net of a playoff if you don't make it through the group stages of Euro qualification, which, by the way, is a distinct possibility when you consider England and most likely France will be number 2 seeds. Like, we could get a stinker of a group here, so suddenly what you do in the Nations League could give you a playoff game to make it to the Euros. So the days of us talking about the Nations League as not mattering, I really disagree with. This tournament, and I think we all thought it on Saturday night, is very vibrant and it's a great tournament, and so these games do matter, absolutely.
And you know what, I might have said that they didn't matter earlier, and I didn't mean it that way. Of course they matter, they're competitive, they're not friendlies, and like I love the Nations League. I mean, that was an amazing atmosphere the other night for, you know, what ultimately would have been a friendly window in another time. But no, like, what I mean is, we've kind of come down to the fact now that the Euros qualification is a be-all and end-all for this regime.
Yes.
And sort of whatever comes before ultimately doesn't. Now, I mean, you lose tomorrow night, we get relegated, we get it knocked out of a possible playoff. There's another big issue there, of course, and it's worthy of further discussion. But, you know, say we don't. Say it's not an amazing performance, it's 1-0, or it's a draw even. We do ultimately kind of... Everything is almost... This is your last chance, but it's a fresh slate for what, as you said, could be a very, very tough draw.
Yeah.
Which we'll find out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, 9th of October, draw being made in Frankfurt. So there is live football this evening as well. Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, it's pretty crucial as well for events at the top of the table. Rovers can open up a 5-point lead at the top of the SSE Electricity Premier Division. They play the last of their games in hand. It's against UCD. Stephen Bradley making one change to the side held to a goalless draw at Shelbourne last week, with Lee Grace in for Ronan Finn and a slight rejig of the wide areas. There is an 8 p.m. start at Tallaght Stadium for that one.
And Rich, we heard from Stuart Lancaster today.
We did. He's confirmed that he's leaving Leinster at the end of this season to take up the position of Director of Rugby at Racing 92. He's been with Leinster since 2016, working under head coach Leo Cullen as senior coach. Lancaster has signed a 4-year contract with the top 14 Giants, and their current head coach, Laurent Trevor, will assume the role of chairman of the management board at the end of the season. Lancaster was asked today why the time was right to leave.
There's been approaches from clubs in the past. The proactiveness of them impressed me, and the values of the organisation. You know, I met Jackie Lorenzetti, who was very impressive, but also very good family man, very good values at the club. I got a very good feel about the club, a very sort of Leinster type feel about the values piece, which I think is really important to me. The challenge of going and coaching in the top 14, I think, you know, playing in the big stadiums in France away from home, and obviously the Défense Arena in Paris is some stadium. Coaching a new group of players and challenging myself to get my philosophy across in a foreign language, you know, and the growth that'll give me as a coach, I think, is a part to play as well. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm 52 now. Let's say I do, you know, the 4 years there, 56. You know, I'd still love to do other things beyond that as well. You know, who's to know whether I stay on or not? But, you know, it opens up opportunities maybe in the Southern Hemisphere or possibly back in Ireland. Who knows? That'd be maybe the dream.
Going to be a big loss. So very much Racing 92's gain. We'll be chatting with Rory O'Connor and Fiona Hayes after 8 o'clock Monday Night Rugby. Caelan Doris, by the way.
Yeah, staying with Matters Leinster, Caelan Doris ruled out of their first interprovincial derby of the season. He's undergoing return to play protocols this week and will miss the trip to Ulster as a result. James Ryan and Will Connors have respective hamstring and back injuries. They'll have them assessed this week, but Jemison Gibson Park and Jordan Larmour should be available, having missed the game against Benetton.
Texting would have started with the more experienced Duffy and Coleman, as they tend to rise to the big game occasions. Also was very disappointed that Ogbene, who as we know can score goals, did not start. I don't think you can criticise the Duffy omission. I think that was proven to be correct. Coleman, maybe on account of Doherty's mistake, comes to the fore, and Ogbene's been in great form. I guess there's an arguable sense that based on what they did against Scotland in June, that you give Parrott and Obafemi another chance together. I think there is the semblance of a partnership there for sure as well.
In open play, general play, I thought both played very well. I thought like Parrott does an awful lot well. You know, it's just we need to figure out who the goal scorer is going to be in that team. You know, like I mean, we hoped for a little while that it was going to be Callum Robinson, and that was probably not a flash in the pan is probably the wrong word, but it was a purple patch of form. So I don't know who the goal scorer is going to be. We need, I suppose it's Ogbene, Obafemi or Parrott to just start knocking in a few. Like.
Yes. I mean, where it's worked for Ireland have been these weird periods where Callum Robinson does something extraordinary, and unfortunately it is extraordinary, it's not the ordinary, and so he's reverted back to mean, and then the two lads do something ridiculous against Scotland, like the two goals that Parrott and Obafemi scored. Yeah. They're just not your meat and two veg, that's a replica we can roll out in the next game kind of goal on either front. So
there's a reason our record striker
Richie's dog agrees.
Richie's dog agrees about my Robbie Keane point that I'm about to make. Yeah, but there's a reason our record striker has 64 goals and the next best has 21.
Yeah,
you know, people don't generally score regularly in international football.
There's a real chance we underappreciated Robbie Keane.
Oh, here we go. Yes, 100% we did.
But we appreciated him massively.
He's got three times more goals than the next highest Irish goal scorer of all time.
So any manager could pick a load of young players and get poor results. A computer program could do it for free. See, Damien Delaney was sort of making this argument with me and Virgin as well. Like, there's only so much credit you can give just because someone's picking young players and not getting results. Is that a great achievement? Is that something that other managers couldn't do?
There's an in-between though.
Yeah.
He's picking young players and not getting results, but I think most people agree there's an improvement in performances and they're playing quite well. No, maybe not. Maybe Damien Delaney doesn't think that at all, but I do. I thought we played well in possibly our last 3 games.
Yeah.
And maybe the results haven't been there. We've got 4 points from the last 3 games.
The text continued about media cheerleaders, and we can't afford to sack him, so let's stay with him. I think the issue isn't one of cost. It's more disruption, and who do you get at this stage as well? Who do you bring in? Somebody says the defensiveness of Stephen Kenny is admirable. Are we going to ignore his comments to judge him on the Nations League results? Connor from Dunleary. Don't think he said judge him on the results, but he did say he would top the group. I think that's a fair point, and well, tune in after 9 as well. I don't think we'll be overly defensive of how Stephen Kenny managed the 90 minutes on Saturday.
Can I be briefly defensive of my defensiveness?
Very briefly.
Okay, I just don't think I think I have an opinion on really despising watching Ireland for over 10 years
and being terrible.
And there was some good results in there and they were great days, don't get me wrong, but most of the time I was watching them thinking, how come we can't get the ball against Georgia? You can't tell me we don't have better players than Georgia or even Gibraltar at times, right? And it's like, I wanted to see a new approach, and that approach is happening, and it's not going that well so far in terms of results, but in other ways we're seeing signs of progress. It's nothing to do with Stephen Kenny. It's just that I want to see a new generation of Irish players playing a certain way, and we're seeing a bit of that, and I believe in it. So it's a personal opinion.
Yeah.
But it's not just this media conspiracy that we're all behind a guy who I've never met.
Should reassure the texter, we didn't all get together in a room and decide our collective outlook on Stephen Kenny. You mentioned Georgia. I've been to a few Georgia games in this job over the years. The most recent one, was it McCarthy was the manager?
They had 60-odd% of the possession.
Here's the interesting thing about Georgia, if you haven't been at the games. They sort of play in slow motion, Georgia. Like, it's like, you know, when you walk by an Astro pitch and you see a 5-side and it's a bunch of lads in their 60s, but they were all good ballers in their day. So they're keeping possession, but it's like it's slow motion. That's sort of like Georgia against Ireland. And they were having 60-70% possession against us because anytime we got the ball, we just booted back to them.
Yeah.
And that, like, what?
That was no way forward.
How was that better?
And we weren't even beating them for a finish either, by the way.
Plus, football is changing. Yeah. So, you know, it's going one way. The rules are going one way. The refereeing is going one way. The profile of players is going one way. You have to play a certain brand of football. And actually, the brand of football on Saturday, the balance, where Bazunu went long early and it was direct at times. It wasn't just, Gary Breen even made the point, it wasn't passing for passing sake. There was a good balance to that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that are getting better, the results aren't. And look, to the texter who said a computer program can do that, I mean, you can get a computer program journalism as well and we'll just say win good, lose bad. There's more nuance than that.
Yeah.
Richie, I think we're pretty much done. Anything you really want to squeeze in before we go from the weekend?
Yeah, worth mentioning the rowers, Fintan McCarthy and Paul O'Donovan, added a World Championship gold to their growing collection of medals. The Skibbereen duo won the men's lightweight double sculls in the Czech Republic on Saturday. It is O'Donovan's incredibly 5th consecutive World Championship gold. Earlier that day, Margaret Cremin and Aoife Casey took bronze in the women's lightweight double sculls. Snida Pushpour won a 3rd world medal, claiming bronze alongside Zoe Hyde in the women's double sculls. And all of that followed Friday's gold in the para women's single sculls for Galway's Katie O'Brien. Regardless of what happens tomorrow night against Armenia, this is rowing country.
Very good. Thanks for the time being.
Nice, lads.
Michael, thank you.
Thank you.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Big prizes of late in the cash machine. Another huge amount to play for this evening. Another rollover. Somebody missed Barry's call today. So if you've entered since Thursday,